Odur, who is the Programs Manager for Media Council of Kenya, and Eric Odur, the Secretary General for Kenya Union of Journalists. Now, before we took the break, we're basically just looking at what can be done differently. Now, one of the hallmarks or the pillars of devolution is promoting accountability and transparency. But when it comes to reportage and how we have covered county governments, we don't seem to have literally pinned the governors or the different office holders when it comes to accountability. Eric, do you feel like we have done a good job as we have done maybe in terms of...
I don't think we've done a good job because the journalists who have been covering governors, like you said, that it seems that the governors are the center of focus in counties where journalists actually focus most. But these journalists, you see that the majority, actually the cases we've received, that the majority of these journalists actually have been co-opted into county government. So they do the county government work instead of holding these governors to account. The number two, like I said again, the county assemblies also ought to be free for journalists to go and do their work. And I think from the beginning, we had started discussions with the county assemblies so that we can even have media centers there where journalists can go there and cover county assembly the same way journalists cover the national parliament, so that we are able to follow up what is happening. If it's a budget that is being discussed there, journalists are able to ask questions and even hold the governors to account for the funds that have been released to the county, to know how much were released to the counties when the budgets are being prepared, how much was the county government able to raise through levying taxes on various businesses and activities within the county, so that we're able to explain to the public, so the public can able to know what their governors and what their counties are doing. So that is actually an area that I think maybe as the way forward, media should now start focusing what is happening in county assembly the same way we focus on what is happening in the national government.
All right, Victor, one of the other challenges that we may be having is capacity, because with the 47 counties, to give an in-depth analysis of what is happening in each county could be a challenge for many media houses, given that we concentrate mainly on, events that are happening.
Well, that's a challenge, but we have seen with the investment and focus that can be done. There's already the thinking of devolving media in terms of how we cover. That is no longer just national, but we started, because when you are running those county-based editions, you would see the amount of interest that creates. So to me, that content, county-based content, is something that media needs to seriously start looking at. Already stations like yourselves have strong now presence in Kisumu, for example, in Mombasa. Nyeri. So we can utilize that. We need to see more. We need to engage. We must start also helping people devolve their thinking. That, like you just mentioned in our off-camp discussion, that, for example, who is caring how many of these governors, maybe, for example, how they got in or never got in. The concentration even on county-based, even our journalists in counties are mainly on national politics. Even where you go and get county-based publications like Turkana Times, I have seen their main focus and stories is purely national.
It's national.
So we must also start devolving. There's a lot of content in the counties, both, like you mentioned, the watchdogging, the accountability issue, but the developmental. How do we help, for example, start shaping the agenda of those counties in terms of what the governors were promising during the inauguration, and journalists start now following up and picking up that they will be already, most of them are now employing. Every governor is now sacking and sacking or employing. What are the procedures? Who are going to be? So that's an area that we need to focus on going forward. They have promised quite a number of things, and they are both the new and the old. We need to also start focusing on how do we see them delivering on some of the promises they are making. So to me, there's a lot of room, there's a lot of content that can be generated from, and that media will also be helping to open up these counties for things like investments by others, because we need to showcase. There's huge potential, for example, in tourism in most of our counties. But when we are talking about national tourism, we talk as if there's nothing in Bungoma, in Kwale, at those county levels. Most of these counties, again, have a resource base of like minerals, Turkana with their oil, Kisumu there's oil, Migori, Kisii with their soapstone, but we are not focusing. So we must also start helping in focusing on these counties to show the potential in them. And by doing that, we start showing some of the policies and laws that are being passed by this county government, for example, to invite, to make investment in those counties more conducive. I mean, when we are talking about health services, they have been devolved, but who cares? The way we have been reporting like health is, is still a national government issue. We are not holding some of this county. We were told, as some said, that Garissa was rated the best in terms of helping doing the health budget, health system. How many of us have showcased what Garissa did that other counties can borrow from? So to me, there's a lot that we can showcase around counties without necessarily over-concern. The 2-3 pages that, for example, the newspapers have already spared for county government can do more than just carrying small pieces when governors are opening toilets or opening what to do some in-depth thing about some of the potential. Remember, most of the governors, and I hope people will be following up on this. Some of the governors were promising things that are outside their CDPs. County governments are guided by the county development plan by law. But some of what I was hearing on TV when they are promising is even not within their current CBT. So how would that? Somebody even asked when some of them were saying, at budget level, who focuses, like Eric said, on the budget-making process? Because you just see us saying MCAs are going to Tanzania to spend. But remember, they're using a budget they passed. And also approved. So we need to focus more on processes. We cover, county government as processes, not as events, which you just see in a day and report. So
actually, me, I was saying it. I'm looking at it this way: that right now, if you are doing media planning, you must plan for the national government and even for 47 counties in any event that we are doing. Like when we were going for elections, and our proposal was that if we are talking about even national tallying center, every county must have its own tallying center. So we are talking about 48 tallying centers. So that is the thinking that actually, as we move forward, we're supposed to be focusing that if you are doing a national planning, you must now plan for 48 governments, national government and 47 government. Then that now the media also supposed to now interrogate what the governors are promising. Like Victor is saying right now, there is a fashion. Every governor is firing, even the civil servants. And we know that there's a procedure. If you want to fire a civil servant, there is a procedure. And so nobody seems to be questioning, by the way. People are just reporting that this governor has fired 2,000 employees. This governor has fired 10,000 employees. Then you ask yourself, who are these? Are they employees of the county governments who are employed under the civil service, or they are political advisors or political appointees who are in office by the outgoing or the governors who have defended their seats? So those are some of the things that we like to see in the media, that the journalists should be able interrogate whatever the governors are saying, and they are doing the same way we do with the national government. Because remember, the devolution was supposed to remove the attention from the national government to the up to the grassroots. So if we focus more on what is happening at the national and forget about what's happening at the grassroots, that means you'll be losing the objectives of the devolution. So the journalists must now start focusing and remove themselves from being part of the county government, because that's actually where the problem is. That in most counties, you realize if you go there, you'll find that governor has already established his media team, and this part of this media team are actually journalists who are employed by various media houses. So when the governor is moving with this team as if these are employees of the county government. Sometimes they even provide transport, because we've seen stations whereby journalists are moving together in a convoy of a governor, and they're part of the governor convoy. So when these journalists go to that event, they will not be objective as they should be, because they are going to pledge loyalty to people who transported them and who's going to take them back. So those are some of the things that we must now know, the boundaries, that as journalists, where are the boundaries? Even if we engage, like we've said, that reporting should not always just be the negative, the scandals, whatever has not been done by the government. But again, we're also supposed to report success stories of the county government. So that is how we'll be able also to motivate and help the public also to understand the roles of the county government and appreciate their role as the public. Because again, we cannot just rely so much on the county governments and their leadership and forget about the public. because the public was supposed to participate in this process, and the media is supposed to provide that platform. So if you are talking about a budget-making process, there is public forum, and public participation is part and parcel of the budget-making process. So the public must also be given space by the media also to participate in the process of developing the counties. So the public is not left behind. We're able to point out what are the priority areas, because the governor, being politicians, they also have to defend their political interests vis-a-vis the interests of the people who elected them. So we also expect that the public must also participate in this process, and the media should also provide that space for them so that they can also point out, if you are coming to our village, this is our priority. Our priority is not a toilet, our priority is water, our priority is not a road, our priority is probably bringing a health facility nearer here so that is equipped so that we are able to access the health services. All right,
Victor, talking about roles and what the county government is there for, you'll find that, for instance, we had a panel where we asked the question, how do you measure that a county government performed well, especially now that it was a time for the electorate to make a decision as to whether they want the same governors back or a new governor. And you'll find some of the governors will say, we built this road, but what is the gauge, what is the measure that even if that road had not been there for the last 54 years, building it does not necessarily mean it's good performance. It could be that that road had been built, but with the funds meant for a hospital and a market and many other facilities. But now, are we articulating and putting out the roles of the county government and possibly even those budgets and what they're supposed to have done so far?
That's where we need the capacity of journalists to focus on. And I hope media houses and other media support groups will invest in helping improve the skills of journalists on focusing on some of those things. Because remember, devolution is also new to some of the journalists.
Right.
So we might not really blame them because this is a new thing to them, but we need to invest in helping journalists start now looking at some of those issues, specialized reporting in the sense of following up some of those issues. Because with an election, many pledges were made, many roads were open, which were not, but like you're saying, using which budget? So we need to start doing budget tracking. For example, just the way we are doing at national government, media also now starts to do, processing. Look at the manifestos, for example, for their promise in relation to the CDP, the county development plans that the law requires. Are we working within? Remember yesterday, Treasury was saying how many billions are still stuck at Treasury, which governors, county government have not even absorbed. So the absorption capacity at that level, what are they? Are we prioritizing on development, recurrent expenditure, or are we just, because most of what is happening in our counties is purely around movement. What is purely recurrent expenditure running up and down the workshops, the whatever. But at development level, little is happening. In a few counties where people even went, like when most of the counties were doing these county business conferences, to investor conferences, and a lot of opportunities, but they never followed up to, for example, with those investors to then come and invest in those areas. So who cares? Who is looking at how much was spent on some of these conferences and where it went? The laws. Who has helped us? I know a person like Owino Pondo was doing something on doing a tracking of how many laws each of these county governments, parliaments have passed and how they relate. Because again, you see there's also a tendency of copy and paste laws that county governments are also just some of them making laws that are not, they just pick from another county and make, which are not very relevant. Some counties never even pass more than 10 laws in 4 years. And remember, one of the things people are complaining about is the business environment, the environment that's county, taxes around. Most of the counties were making just laws around tax collection. But in terms of helping development-wise, none. Some of those roads that we are mentioning are purely roads done by National Highways Authority, and not even under the county government. So again, helping people understand what are the devolved functions, what are the devolved functions that governments, county government can do, and because there's already that big challenge. There's too many devolved functions, funds at the county level. For example, there's already a big fight between CDF has maintained some of the function of roads, a bit of bursaries, and county governments are doing the same. They manage, so you define
duplication of roles.
There's so serious duplication of roles at that level. So we need to know what county governments can do, what CDFs, the constitutions can do, what national government. Because remember, one of the debate was that there are functions that national government must do. you know, I mean, that remain, but there are functions that county government, and so we need to see more serious, I mean, parliamentary reporting skills for county-based journalists, so that they start reporting county assembly discussions, so that we see the kind of laws they are making. Are they, I mean, relevant to those counties? Do they help? Because some of these CDPs, the county development plans, if they are not anchored in law, they can't be implemented. And many of the wish lists for governors have remained unfulfilled simply because they never then moved to make law, I mean, to help them, to help
transform them into law.
To help them implement what they were talking about. So we need to see that. So that's an area that we need a lot. Two, county government, and I was talking to the COG, the Council of Governors, through their communication person, to see how do we help in strengthening the communication functions of counties, so that it's not just about the director of communication, who is purely a political appointee of the governor. Most of these counties have employed communication officers. They have very robust communication officers, but they are not helping in packaging counties in terms of what the CECs and CEOs are doing, and what the focus is. In fact, most of them have what is called now the Governor's Press Service. And they release, and our media house just picks those Governor's Press Service and reproduce them. So we need more engagement. How do we improve the working relationship between the county communication officers and the media in those? So that it's not just about writing about, but content that helps in line with the county government Act of 2012, which says county government must use TV, radio, newspaper. I mean, most of them, you look at county governments, for example, their websites, most of the tweets are around what governors are doing. Right. Yet, by law, they are required to run very active websites to show what they are doing. Most of those websites are dead, and nobody follows up to see.
Actually,
right, let me just pause you a little bit, because we need to release KTN Home, and Life and Style is just about to begin. But on KTN News, we continue with this conversation regarding county government and how we have covered them as the members of the Fourth Estate. So for those of us on KTN Home, it's Goodbye and Life and Style is just about to begin. If you'd like to continue with us on this conversation, switch over to KTN News. All right. Sorry, you are coming in.
I wanted to say that one of the biggest challenges that most county governments actually experienced in the previous regime was that they did not have appropriate communication strategy. How do they communicate with the public? How do they tell the public that this is what we've done and this is what we intend to do for the next few months or for the next few years? So if that can be addressed, whereby the county communication teams can be revived and have a proper strategy on how they're going to communicate what the governors have done, then that's going to help a lot, so that the public can also get to track what the governors are doing. Number two, the media, again, also need to help this county government in terms of setting the agenda. If you look at some of the promises that were being made by even let's start from the MCAs. Some of the promises that were being made by MCAs are actually not even within their mandate as the MCAs. So that's, again, where the media is supposed to sit down and now start setting the agenda by working with the county governments and especially the county assemblies to set the agenda that this is what we expect from the county assemblies as we move forward in the next 5 years, so that with these MCAs can get to understand what is their role. And that is now comes to the capacity building of journalists who are covering these county assembly. I know if you've been these journalists who cover national parliament, actually these people are grounded and have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge on what the parliament is supposed to do. So we expect this also to shift to the county assemblies, whereby we are able also to have a crop of journalists who are authorities on county government, so they are able to articulate some of the issues that are supposed to be done by the county. By doing so, we'll be now be helping the public also now to understand the roles of the county government. So even them, when we come to the election period, then they are able also now to question the MCAs and their governors and even the senators that for the first 5 years, this is what we expected and this is what you've done. Then we the kind of the partnership we'll want to see between the media and the county government, it shouldn't be the partnership whereby the media now started doing a PR job for the county government. If we do that, then we will be losing the trust and the confidence of the public. We should be able to do what is right and hold this, the county governments to account for everything they do, for every coin they get from the national government, for every coin they get from the taxpayers through the taxes that they levy on services and the businesses within their jurisdiction, to ensure that this money actually is spent prudently and is able to change the lives of the citizen, because that was the main objective of the county government. Again, there has always been a blame between the county government and the national government on how the funds are released from the national government and the county government. Again, this is an area whereby we need also to come in as a media and find out who is fooling who. Has the government released the money or not? Like Victor is saying that right now the Treasury says that there are so much that is actually lying there that has not been utilized by the county government. Yet the county government, as we're approaching elections, they were telling us that, oh, you know, you've not paid salaries because the funds have not been released by the Treasury. We are not able to discharge our duties in terms of offering health services to the people because the funds are being held by the Ministry of Health. So again, these are the things that the media is supposed to debunk and help the public to understand who is fooling you, so that we do not have a situation whereby somebody is sleeping on his job or her job, but then blame the other person. So when the media comes in, they're able now to debunk that and tell the public that, hey, look here, the funds have already been released, but your governor or your county assembly has not budgeted appropriately for these funds, and therefore these funds are not able to be utilized. By doing so, we'll be helping the public now to understand where is the problem, then who should we ask and who should we go to ensure that these funds are released and are actually spent as budgeted for. Because there has only been this, right now you can see every governor is rejecting an expenditure that has already been passed by the county assembly, but nobody is questioning that. So that's when now the media comes in to tell that, okay, fine, these funds have already been budgeted and voted for this specific function. If you are going to do a reallocation, then that means that again you have to go to back to the county assembly, and then you do reallocation for those funds to be used for specific functions. Right. But when we just behave as if we are the mouthpieces of this county government, then again, we're not helping the public.
Okay, and Victor, I'd like to hear what your thought is on whether we are guilty of not having devolved as the media. And by that, what I mean is, look at even the election that just took place. There are several governors who raised a red flag and say that they will not concede. We've got the likes of Wavinyandeti and maybe even Ivan Skidero, although with him appearing at Sonko's inauguration, then maybe that may have changed. But the country almost came to a halt when it's the presidential election. One would have thought that now with the county governments, it was going to ease pressure from the national government being such a big thing to now also people concentrating on the county governments. Are we also guilty of maybe, or is it just the volume of the office of the presidency?
Thank you, Mike. While the volume of the president is still a matter, but I think there is need to start devolving our thinking and coverage and focus as media. Because like you're mentioning, quite a number of these governors, for example, I mean, the people have already shown interest to go for petitions and related. But who is following it up? All our focus is on the presidency, because the thinking is still that the president determines everything and the power. We have not started helping people refocus. While, yes, there's interest in the presidency because Kenya as a country, the presidency is the national symbol and head of state. But I think there's also need to start focusing seriously on county governments. How many of these governors, for example, will be going for petitions, will be going for what? Because most, like you said, they will be sworn in by today, all of them. They already...
And also the question maybe we should also be raising is why the governors can carry on with their swearing in, whereas the president cannot, even when they're pending petitions.
I think somebody raised that in one of the discussions and said, did the law overlook this? Because for the president, there was 14 days to wait for if there's a petition. For governors, yes, the period is 28. I mean, county government, I mean, it's 28 days for a petition. Why wouldn't they, for example, wait for 28 days before they are sworn in? And so those are also challenges, maybe lessons learned from this election that we want to start thinking about. You remember somebody said, one of my friend Eric, they were saying yesterday, if even, for example, Kederwa was to go to court, he can't beat, that was his opinion, he can't beat Sonko because immediately Sonko was elected. there was too much activity cleaning of the town, doing already a campaign.
He literally assumed office and took over.
So even in a week, when you are going to call a by-election, then nobody will beat him. I mean, there was that also thinking that we need to see if also governors can wait and the issues of petitions are sorted out before they assume office. I mean, at one level we are behaving as if we are a developed country. At one level we are thinking as if we are a national best. So to me, I think there's also lessons. The media needs to start now also looking around, focusing on those counties where people have raised, have already gone to court. The petitions, the actions of the current governors, are they resonating with the environment in the counties? So there's room and there's need for media to focus to help counties grow, because at some stage we fail to hold most of the county governments accountable to what they're expected to do. That's where in some instances people like those in Nairobi, Mombasa, I mean major towns, got a lot of heat, the governors around us, but we forgot that also. And remember, media is now represented in almost all the 47 counties. We have correspondents in those areas. So the coverage may not be like Nairobi, but there's room that we can do something.
We can do something. Eric, your thoughts on whether we should possibly devolve media in terms of our thinking and coverage and what we concentrate on, such that now, even after an election like this, it is not just concentrating on the presidency, but also the county governments, because the county governments really are meant to be more important to the electorate at their local level than the national government.
Yes, I think in our thinking, I think we've already devolved, and what remains is just the establishment of structures that we can always use in the county government. And Victor and I, there's a discussion we've been having on how if we can even try to establish press clubs all over the country, that every county has got its own press club where journalists can always converge and have a discussion about that particular country. And I think that is now where we should be focusing on how do we now establish structures in all the 47 counties, so that we do not concentrate so much on what's happening at the national level, but again, even at the county government, the discussion that is going on, so that journalists can also realize that, by the way, we are no longer in a situation whereby we used to focus on only in one national government, but right now, as we here in this particular county, we are now have serious responsibility in terms of championing and setting the agenda for this particular county. So what we should be thinking about, and media support groups will be thinking about, is how do we help these journalists in counties to establish the structures there where they can now start to operate as the county journalists, so that they can be able to now to perform their duties as expected in those particular counties.
Okay. Eric, as we wind up, what you possibly would like to see done differently moving forward, especially now that we're in the second term of devolved governments, what is it that we should be doing a little bit more and concentrating more on?
One of the things, in fact, in the requirement of the law, is that county assemblies must establish places for journalists to work from. I mean, established areas, I mean, press centers, just like the National Assembly. So one of the discussions we are having with the COG, that's the Council of Governors, through their program, the communication department, is one, how do we improve those structures? Because access to those areas has also been difficult. The journalists accessing some of those parliaments. Two, now we have an access to information law and Article 35 of the Constitution. How do we, for example, ensure that county governments also pass access to information laws to allow journalists access information? So those are things we'll be doing. The other thing is that, like Eric mentions, journalists at the counties need to maintain professional relationship with the counties, and not to get sucked in, but not also just to maintain adversarial relationship. We need to balance our way. Where they have done well, they have done well. We acknowledge and do so to that effect. Where they have done bad, they have done bad. So to me, I focus largely on development journalism, where we can package content around helping counties grow. You know, once you start showing that a county has a potential for development, for example, in tourism, and it's the county government that is delaying, the county assembly is delaying to pass laws, then there will be pressure on those counties that they are investors, but it's just you who are delaying. So we need to start packaging counties to show them as centers, the 47 centers of development, not just Nairobi based. That then would help counties put pressure on this government governor to start opening up, to start making some of the promises. Because if you look at the 6, 7, 10 promises they are making, very nice promises. If they are actualized, they can help. And surely speaking, there are counties that have done well. You go to Marsabit, you go to some of these counties, they have done well in some areas. They might have failed in 1 or 2 other areas, but some of them have done well. How do we package this? How do we showcase some of this? 2, how do we build the capacity, decentralized information from the governors, just so that communication about counties is not synonymous, synonymous with the governor, so that we start seeing empowered CECs and CEOs and other technical people who are working in those governors, they can engage. So how do we strengthen communication functions of county government so that we can still start seeing many people, most of them will be having 8 to 10 CECs, that's the ministers. How do we see them more packaging and what the counties are doing more than how do we start seeing? Because if you remember how many, like in the county I come from, I think it's only 7 MCAs who are re-elected. In Nairobi, so that tells you we need to start showing the performance of these MCAs in counties. Because again, we have confused the function of MCAs to providing roads and water. And that's not their function. Their function is oversight, lawmaking. And so we need to start gauging them in that. And how do we show? It's only by most of our media showing how they are performing in the county.
Against what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
All right, Eric, your closing comments.
Yes, I will say that now that the focus also is, now we are talking about the focus on the counties, I would like to see a more organized journalist in every county. So that even if you're talking about the capacity building of these journalists are already organized. You now know how you can target them. You now know how you can have a conversation with them. So, because at the moment, everybody is for himself or herself, then God for us all in the counties because of these competing interests of various media houses. But we want to see at some level whereby we have an organized group within a particular county, so that even if you're establishing structures there and seeing how you are going to engage, at least you're now engaging with an organized group. It's better and convenient to engage with an organized group than people who are scattered all over, so that everybody is doing his or her stuff without knowing what actually they're supposed to be doing collectively as the media. Because when we are talking about the media, we don't talk about individual journalists, we're talking about what a group of journalists within a particular county actually is doing. So being organized actually is going to help us as far as going forward. Then we look at the county, the role of what the media can do and have a central place within the county government, so that they are able to address both the arms of the county government. That's the government, the executive, and the legislative arm. That's the county assembly. So that we are able now to articulate all these issues without being seen to be leaning towards only the governor and neglecting the county assembly. I know that there are county assemblies whereby actually even them they have their own communication team. Then the governor also has its own communication team, but we would like to see a situation whereby we are working as a team, so that these journalists are able to cover both arms of the county government without having that kind of friction between the two arms. And that will help us in terms of now coming up with information and accessing information and giving this information to the public. So to wrap it up is that we want to see more organized journalists within the particular county. So that gives us very easy to engage with them.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We'll have to wind it up right there because of time. Victor Odor, who is Victor Bwire, who is the programs manager for Media Council of Kenya, and Eric Odor, who's the Secretary General for Kenya Union of Journalists. Thank you for joining us this morning. And that is the newsroom. But do stay with us right here. Kivumbi 2017, the early version, continues in just a bit, where we have more stories that are making headlines.
This is KTN News.